All right, today we are diving deep into the Upanishads. These are some truly ancient texts from India, and they're all about one of the most profound quests in human history. But here's the twist. It's not a quest for something out there in the world. It's about a radical journey inward. So let's just start with the huge question that drives this whole thing. The thinkers behind the Upanishads did something revolutionary. They kind of turned their backs on the outside world of gods and big rituals and asked this startling question. What if ultimate reality, the secret sauce of the universe, isn't out there in the heavens, but actually deep inside our own consciousness? And look, this was not about finding some knowledge that would make you rich or famous. No. The stakes here were way, way higher. The wisdom they were after was like a key to unlock a state of being that's totally beyond suffering, to find what they called the supreme treasure. Now, to really get how big of a deal this was, we got to look at where it all came from. I mean, the Upanishads didn't just pop up out of nowhere. They were actually the final word in a really long and complex religious tradition. So the whole foundation here is something called the Veda, which literally just means knowledge. Think of it as this massive library of hymns, prayers, and instructions for rituals that was the absolute center of religious life in ancient India for centuries. And the Upanishads, they're considered the very last and, the most philosophical part of that whole collection. And what's so cool is how you can actually see that evolution laid out. You can trace how the tradition moves from these really early hymns, the Samhitas, to the Brahmanas, which are basically these super detailed instruction manuals for rituals, and then finally it climaxes with the Upanishads, which are all about digging into the meaning behind it all. It's a clear path from doing things on the outside to understanding things on the inside. And this right here just nails that shift. The earlier texts, those Brahmanas, were essentially guidebooks for priests. I mean, they were obsessed with getting every little detail of these big, external sacrifices right. But the Upanishads? They took a giant step back and asked, okay, but what does all this mean? They literally shifted the focus from the physical fire on the altar to the inner fire of awareness and contemplation. So who exactly was leading this incredible intellectual and spiritual revolution? Well, this is where the story gets even more fascinating. It wasn't just the usual suspects, the priests. It was this amazingly diverse crew of people. Turns out, the society that produced the Upanishads was a lot more open than what came later. This search for knowledge wasn't locked down to one class or one gender. We're talking about women scholars debating with the best of them, kings teaching priests, guys with no known family background being welcomed just for their honesty, and even wandering hermits who had totally checked out of society. Okay, let's talk about some of these people. First up is Maitreyi. The texts literally call her a scholar of sacred lore. So when her super famous husband decides he's going to leave worldly life behind, he offers to split up all his stuff for her. And her response is just incredible. She basically says, forget the money, give me the knowledge of immortality instead. It just shows you what they truly valued. And then you have Gargi Vakanavi. Picture this. It's basically an ancient philosophical showdown in a king's court packed with male scholars. And she stands up and just relentlessly grills the most famous sage of the era. She's sharp, she's fearless, and everyone treats her as an equal. It's just this powerful reminder of the role women played in these high-level debates. Oh, this story is fantastic. There's this young kid, Satyakama, who wants to study with a guru. The problem is, he has no idea who his father was, which was a huge deal back then. But when he goes to the teacher and just tells him the plain, honest truth, the teacher accepts him on the spot. He says that kind of unwavering honesty is the real mark of a true seeker. It was character, not status, that mattered. Okay, so you have all these different kinds of people all turning their attention inward. So what did they find? Well, this is the core of it all. They all kind of zeroed in on one central, totally mind-blowing discovery about reality itself. Having moved past the big public rituals and the gods in the sky, their investigation became deeply, deeply personal. They weren't just asking what's the world made of anymore. They were asking something way more intimate. Who am I, really? Like, who is the me behind all my thoughts, my feelings, my body? So to answer that, they first came up with a name for the ultimate reality of the whole universe, the big picture. They called it Brahman. You can think of it as the sacred energy that fuels everything, the one single source from which all of reality springs. So that's the macrocosm. At the very same time, they were looking at the microcosm inside themselves. They searched for that unchanging core of who we are, the part that's deeper than our personality. And they called this the ātman, the real permanent inner self. And here it is,
This is the lightning bolt moment. The absolute most profound, electrifying discovery in the Upanishads is that Brahman, the ultimate reality of the entire cosmos, and Atman, the deepest essence of your own individual self, are not two different things. They are one. They are identical. The universe isn't something separate from you. You are the universe.
Now, because this idea is so hard to wrap your head around, the Upanishads often use metaphors and riddles to explain it. This famous one about the two birds is a perfect example. So one bird is your individual self, busy living life, eating the sweet and bitter fruits of experience. But the other bird, that's the ātman, the universal self. It just watches, perfectly calm, totally untouched. They're on the same tree, in the same body, but they exist on two totally different levels.
Here's another really beautiful metaphor, and this one describes how the self moves from one life to the next. Just like a caterpillar pulls itself together right before it moves to a new blade of grass, the self, the ātman, gathers up its essence as it leaves the body, getting ready for its next form. It's a vision of an unbroken journey, not an end.
Now, these ideas, which were first being explored over 2,500 years ago, they didn't just vanish into history. Their impact has been absolutely massive, and you can still feel the ripples all over the world today. I mean, just think about this for a second. It's pretty staggering. Because of their influence on major world religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, and then later on, countless philosophers and thinkers all over the globe, it's been estimated that the core ideas from the Upanishads have touched the worldviews of at least half the people on this planet. And just to give you some perspective, the earliest of these texts were being written around the same time as the Greek poet Homer. They were developed over hundreds of years, but here's the key. They are not just dusty old historical documents. For millions of people right now, today, they are living texts, real sources of guidance and spiritual insight. So to wrap up their impact, they became the philosophical heart of modern Hinduism. Their ideas helped kickstart the birth of Buddhism. And from the ancient world right up to our own time, their radical questions about who we are have fascinated thinkers everywhere. It's a legacy that is truly global and absolutely timeless. And that brings us right back to where we started, with that fundamental question. You see, the Upanishads don't just hand you an answer. They invite you on a journey. They pose the question, who in reality am I? And now, thousands of years later, that question is passed on to us. So, how would you answer?